Really happy to have this opportunity to speak today about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's Cascade Engineering, and specifically about our employer choice strategies for equity and community growth. And we look at becoming or trying to become an employer of choice as both a recruiting and a retention strategy, right? So Melissa also asked if I would explain my role as chief culture bearer, and that came from the owner, Fred Keller. 25 years ago, he pulled me aside in a hallway and he said, Dave, in addition to your role as director of talent development, I expect you to be a keeper of the culture. Now, I expect you to do anything and everything you can to ensure we do not lose our people-centered focus. So that meant that at times I would have to go into Fred's office, or at other times, the offices of other executives, and express my concerns and raise red flags with things that were happening or decisions being made that seemed to go counter to the culture. So sometimes I would have to go into Fred's office about concerns I had with what Fred was doing. And sometimes he'd agree and sometimes he didn't. Right? So in some ways, I guess it was kind of like a conscience of the company that I was doing regarding to how people are being treated. And so chief culture bearer is really just a formal title for that responsibility of being a keeper of the culture. And so as Melissa said, I've been involved with the development of our employees, our leaders, and our culture for most of my 24 or 44 years. So, employees today want a lot of things. Google it, and there's a multitude of surveys with varying results, but two employee wants that show up consistently are development opportunities and job security. In fact, one survey indicated that 41% of employees fear losing their jobs, and they worry their job skills will become outdated because of advancements in technology such as automation, artificial intelligence, and robots. Another survey indicated 52% of today's employees believe they are easily replaceable in their jobs. And 57% of their employers agree with that statement. So organizations can help employees feel more safe and secure by offering them development opportunities. So in his book, The World is Flat, Thomas Friedman explains that the old and formal contract with employees was this: as long as you come to work every day and do a good job, you'll have a job for life. Why would any company want to get rid of a good, dependable worker? So, but according to Friedman, this is gone. And so the new employee contract is this: while we no longer can guarantee lifetime employment, we will guarantee you development opportunities to build your skills and increase your value in the labor market. Prior to 2008, Cascade Engineering was proud of the fact that we had never had a mandatory layoff in the history of the company. In fact, we promoted that fact to potential new employees. But that all changed in 2008 with the Great Recession. As many companies did, we had to downsize significantly and ended up forcing 20 good employees into layoffs, something we had never done. Most of those downsides in our organization took voluntary layoff. So we can no longer claim that we've never had a layoff in the history of the company, right? But we replace that with this notion of we will provide you with training and development opportunities. And we have a program that's called Pay for Contribution, and it provides career and development opportunities for employees. So this is just a basic model of it. And it kind of works. It's kind of a line of sight for any employee that comes into the organization to see career ladder opportunities, right? So they start as an affiliate, which is our word for temp, and that's they spend 90 days, kind of like the probationary period, and these are entry level. And then once they get their 90 days, come to work every day, do a good job, they can be transferred and become a level A, hired in fully and become a level A. And then I put just a few of the requirements to be a level A on there. It's not certainly all encompassing, it doesn't have everything, but they stay a level A at a certain pay rate. And then after a few months, they can decide, I want to become a level B. And so level B really is nothing more than an experience level A with some additional responsibilities and some additional training programs they have to go through. They remain that for a few months, and then if they wish, it's their choice, it's always their choice. If they wish, then they can apply to become a level C. They have to make a decision though. Do they want to be a level C admin or a level C tech? So level C admins, in essence, are being trained to be, I'm sorry, I got a dog down here. Are trained to actually be backup supervisors. And they take on a lot of the administrative supervisory types of roles when the supervisor is on vacation or gone. The tech C, they learn how to change the molds, handle material, adjust the molding process, because we're an injection molder, plastic products. And so after they become a level C, they can then connect to a career ladder. And so your admins will typically gravitate towards supervision or quality or other administrative roles, IT potentially. The technicians would tend to get on career ladders, maintenance, apprenticeship programs, process engineering, and there's all others. Those are just, four that seem to be the major ones. And of course, you'll notice there's the college university connection. Really starts to happen right there, because in order to go to a career ladder, many of them are going to require some type of additional education, potentially a degree. Now, remember the new employee contract? Well, this is a true story that happened to us. We had an employee who took the 2008 voluntary layoff, and they moved out of the state, moved to the East Coast somewhere, and they ran out of unemployment, so it's time to find a new job. So they went to an organization, applied for a third shift operator position. And we know this because the employer, the potential employer, called us and asked us, did this person take all this training? Did this person actually fill in for the supervisor when they were gone? Did they actually enter data into these computer systems? And the answer to all those was yes. That company made them a supervisor on first shift. And they said, our current supervisors don't have this amount of training or experience. So that's an example of how, development programs can increase people's skills to make them more valuable in the labor market. We also believe strongly in promoting from within. So we have a goal that 60% of our internal positions are filled internally. So we have traditional succession planning, high potential development programs. And we try to create as much development career opportunities as we can, including things like job shadowing and internal internships. So because Cascade Engineering is an anti-racism organization, which engages in employee development that supports diversity, equity, and inclusion, we naturally would look for suppliers and or educational partners that also support these things by creating equitable and inclusive classrooms where every student has equal access to learning, is treated equitably by the learning community, and feels valued and supported by the instructors and peers. So I actually talked to our executive VP of Business Services and our director of People Advancement, and I said, so I gave them a list of 8 things I think we look for, and they added a few things. So it's called expectations of educational partners. And so you've got kind of 2 halves, the business relationship, and then you've got the equitability side, right? And so it'd be very important to us that they are able, the educational entity, to create strong personal relationships with leaders in the organization, as well as the L&D professionals in the organization. That they invite feedback from us or business in terms of needs and expectations. That they're willing to, if it fits, to offer customized training with classes on site at our place. This is very important to us, a single point of contact for prepayment, because we are an organization. If somebody wants to take a college class, we prepay it. We will help them get registered and we will prepay it. So we need a contact, a single point where we can get a hold of that person and say, listen, this person's enrolled, we want to pay for it with our company credit card. And, some schools are good at that and some are not. particularly good at that. So, but that's very important to us because that's a barrier to someone who may want to go down the college road, but that outlay of that, the expense of tuition and books could be a hindrance. So we try to take that out of the way by allowing books to be covered on our tuition as well. Assistance and identification, application, and administration of state and federal training grants. And our community college, Grand Rapids Community College, has just been phenomenal with this over the years, letting us know what's available, helping us apply, helping to administer it. That was just a big thing for them. And then, of course, the equitability side, we would certainly expect that there's a diverse teaching staff, that they have a staffed and active DEI program, that they would make concerted efforts to recruit minority and underrepresented populations of students into those underrepresented professions. And in our case, the biggest one would be minorities and women in engineering. That would be the one for us. Diverse graduates offered as viable candidates, obviously. And then we'd also, talking to those we hired, we'd ask them, what was your experience working or going to that school or educational entity? And we'd want to hear that they are treated equitably, fairly, felt valued, supported, those types of things. And then, of course, in today's world, it's more important than ever, right? That there's accommodation efforts for the non-English speakers. 25, 30 years ago, this wasn't as important as it is today. So here are three of our primary educational partnerships. Now, there are certain others we have used, but these three are the ones that have had the closest working relationship with us. And so I've listed many of the things each brings to the partnership, but I'm going to tell you right up front, the most important reasons are right here: their customer service, their customer focus, and their employer engagement. And those three things created the strong relationship. So if I talk about Davenport University, now I'm biased because Davenport's my alma mater. I got my MBA from them. I taught there for 10 years as adjunct. But prior to me even having my degree, we were working with Davenport because they were so willing to come to our location, come and talk to me about things, offer classes on site. And the relationship was so strong, they actually created three certification programs. One was in human resources, one was in quality, and one was in supervision. And the employees, our employees, could sign up for these college classes. They were offered on site, so they didn't have to go to the campus, which could be intimidating. They could walk across the parking lot, attend the class, get the college credit. Well, the first class had two that actually did all the work, graduated. So we had a graduation ceremony. The president of our company, President of Davenport, was there. And on the spot, the president of Davenport said, we are going to start, anyone who earns a certificate program, we are going to match your tuition dollars. So at that point, it was $1,500 a year. They were given $1,500. So now the employees in the certificate program who got the certificate got $3,000. Now, that's quite a commitment to a relationship, I think. Right? Grand Rapids, already talked about it, their assistance with the training grants, but also way back in 1976, they were instrumental in me helping starting a maintenance apprenticeship program. So the relationship is probably the longest with the Grand Rapids Community College. They do a phenomenal job with their customer service. And in Ferris State, you'll notice there's a plus sign there. So my 2-year technical degree is from Ferris State University in plastics technology. And because we're a plastic injection molding company, that's an important program, but they're in Big Rapids, which is about 50 miles north. And so they actually created Applied Technology Center with Grand Rapids Community College. So now the plastics programs are offered at the community college. But sometimes we get plastics interns, engineering interns from them. They also house the Jim Crow Museum. And so as part of our anti-racism efforts, we actually rented part of the Jim Crow Museum, set it up in our learning community for a week, had all of our employees go through it, mandatory, offered it to suppliers, customers, the community at large. And so that's a big deal that they can support us. Plus, they were always willing to come on site and do customized training classes for us. But I would tell you what really stuck in my mind for those three over the other ones that I tried to create relationships with. These three came to me. They said, hey, we will come out to Cascade. We'll meet with you in your office, right? The other ones I tried to work in a relationship with, no, yeah, we're not interested in customizing anything. We're not interested in bringing classes on site. In fact, if you want to talk to us, you need to drive out to our location. Well, okay, I did, but nothing ever came of it. So that's a big deal. That's that customer service focus. So Cascade Engineering's purpose, the reason that we exist, and you may have heard the triple bottom line, well, that's our reason, to have a positive impact on people. And when we say that, we're talking about the community at large, and we're talking about our employees, to have a positive impact on the environment, and to be financially successful, because if you're not profitable, you can't do the other two, right? It's just common sense. So everything I share today started with one man, and that's Fred Keller, founder of Cascade Engineering. You know, it is Fred's philosophies about business that led to the creation of what I consider a very special culture that I was blessed to be part of for 44 years. You know, I think it was Peter Drucker who said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you can see by Fred's upper quote there that what he thinks about the importance of culture. And then the bottom quote is someone once asked Fred, why did you start Cascade Engineering? And that's what he said, to show that you can run a business that cares about people and still make money. And I just have a feeling that in the 70s, that was not being taught in business schools. So I think Fred has always had a very unique vision on what leadership and what having a company means. So as I go through the presentation, I think you will realize this about Fred. So becoming an employer of choice is a level 1 goal for Cascade. That's the highest level goal. And so this is a model. I drew it on an airplane back in the mid-90s, coming back from a conference. And if you're an employer of choice, you should have low turnover and be able to attract the best people. If you have low turnover, you should have more effective teams, because we know teams go through a natural process, forming, storming, norming to get to performing. Well, if you have constant turnover, your teams are in a constant state of flux. They never stay at that performance stage. So if we have effective teams, because we have low turnover, because we're an employer of choice, then our continuous improvement efforts are going to be better, because our teams work on things like increasing productivity and lowering our cost and improving quality and all these other things. If we do that well, because we have effective teams, because we have low turnover, because we're an employer of choice, our customers and employees are happy with us. And if our customers are happy with us, typically they will give us more work, which means we're more profitable. If our employees are happy with us, we don't have high turnover, which has a cost. Plus, we'd like to think they're a little bit more productive, a little bit more engaged, and that probably has bottom line ramifications. So if we become more profitable, what can you do with those profits? Well, you can pay bonuses, you can increase wages, better benefits, grow the company, invest in the company, which gives more growth opportunity for the employees, more positions to fill. We can buy new equipment, makes their job easier. We can paint the break room. We can have a company picnic. All those things that go into helping you become an employer of choice. So I drew it as a reinforcing loop, because it can't ever end, right? It's not something you ever get to the top of the mountain and say, we've done it, we're an employer of choice. Because if you do, now you got one way to go. So it's something you constantly must work on. So what are the inputs then for becoming an employer of choice? And again, this is our philosophy on that. So the first is you got to have cultural expectations that people will treat one another with dignity and respect. That's bottom line. And it's a hard thing. You got to keep working on it. But if you're not going to do that, how do you ever become truly an employer of choice? We expect our leaders to be servant leaders. Your people have to be proud for working in that organization. And that's where our community engagement efforts come. We've already talked about development opportunities and career opportunities and job security. And then you've got a safe workplace. And when I say safe, physically and psychologically, right? And then competitive compensation and benefits, and then finally, policies and procedures. So we'll talk about each one of these just quickly. It's always more complex than what I'm presenting here, but just it'll give you a flavor and the kinds of things that we have done and tried to do to go after that. So the first thing is this idea of cultural expectations, and it's really right here, right? To create a workplace for every employee, regardless of their cultural individual difference, knows they are valued, respected as a human being. Everyone has equitable opportunity to learn, grow, develop, participate. That's our cultural kind of bottom line, if you will, right? And employees hear about this day one in orientation, and then we talk about their responsibility to help create it. And then every training class that we run, we're probably going to tie this back in one way, shape, or form. So, you know, a metaphor, a tree is always a great metaphor, right? Because the roots, right? Those are things that keep you planted firmly. And well, that's our cultural expectations. That's our, you know, partly our purpose for existing, have a positive impact on people, on the environment, and be financially successful. Then the trunk grows out of the roots, but the trunk is the thing that supports everything above it. And that's where leadership comes. And then when you talk about the branches and the leaves, well, that's all employee expectations and behaviors. And if I was to synthesize it, the expectations are we treat one another with dignity and respect and kindness and consideration. I mean, there's hundreds of words I can put around it, but to sum them up, that's what I would say we really kind of say when we say all employee expectations. So this leadership thing, so we set the expectation, we educate and train, and then we hold them accountable. So here's the leadership expectations. One, we expect them to be 7 habits servant leaders. In 1993, we adopted the 7 habits of highly effective people as the foundation of leadership development. But we quickly realized, wait a minute, it's not just leaders here that can benefit from this. Everyone can benefit from this. So to this day, it's mandatory that every employee in the organization complete the 12-hour 7 habits workshop. But it's especially important for leaders. They need to develop high trust relationships, create an inclusive culture, be approachable, listen to employees, exercise emotional control. But one of the things that will not be tolerated or accepted are leaders who, you know, when they get upset, they yell, they scream, they swear, they belittle, they badger, they bully, they try to intimidate, or they pound their fist on the table when they're talking. That will not make it a cascade. And I've been involved with the removal of past director level and managerial levels because that they thought they were going to get away with that. And the last thing is leaders have to have the courage to hold people accountable. But notice it's balanced with consideration. We do have a leadership certification program, so this is more of the training for them. And you can look at it's just a lot of things, right? But this is something that we expect every leader to complete probably over a 2 to 3 year period. So a lot of training hours. And some of them are mandatory right off the bat, and some of them are offered a little bit later down the road. But you can kind of see it's, you know, sometimes I'm afraid some organizations think, well, we'll just run them through one training and call it good. You know, you gotta keep pushing things forward, giving them some new skills, some new tools. And then this is how we hold them accountable. So this is a tool I developed back in the early 2000s, and based on Stephen Covey's definition of trustworthiness, that to be truly trustworthy, you have to have character and competence. So the vertical axis is management. That's the competence side, right? That's about managerial task skills. That's about holding people accountable. That's about developing sound processes and procedures and systems, and then holding people accountable to them. Leadership, the horizontal axis, is really about how do you treat people. And so it's a 42 item assessment. 21 items are character-based, 21 are competency-based. And then I can average the scores and I can plot it on this grid, right? So If the dot's in the blue, that's good. That's cool, right? That's why it's blue. It's cool. You're doing well. You're respected. You're liked. You're a competent leader. If your scores fall in the yellow, I'll be having a conversation with you about some concerns that I see in the scores and the comments. And if you're in the red, you're put on a mandatory 90-day performance intervention with a document you must sign. It says, this is how we got here. Here's the 3-4 things you need to do between now and 90 days. We need to reassess you. And if we do not see improvement, we will remove you from the leadership position. Now, we're not expecting 180-degree turnaround, right? Depending on how full the scores are. What we're expecting is some level of improvement. And sometimes that's seen in the comments because there's one open-ended question that goes with the 42 items. And that is, what would you like to tell me about your experience in working with or for this particular leader? And I collect all the comments, I synthesize them. In other words, we don't give verbatim comments back. If people use dates or specific instances or names, I take them out. I only want to talk about what is the issue? What are they trying to explain through that example? And then I sit down with the people and we use those comments to decide what kind of improvement do we have to go for. So it's more complex than that, but if you don't have any way to hold leaders accountable, what's going to make them do what you need them to do? And then employee pride. So we talked about that's kind of our community engagement efforts. So, you know, we have a reentry program. Now, I would tell you this, that Fred Keller has never been against hiring ex-felons or returning citizens. We had ex-felons in the company back in the 70s and 80s. It's just that in the last 10 or 15 years, we've become more focused to intentionally see if we can hire more returning citizens. And then you'll see another picture there. That man is Mark Peters. He's the president CEO of Butterball Farms. And he's very much if you want, a follower of Fred Keller. And so he was so impressed with the reentry efforts we had. He created his own little program called 32-2, where he got 30 companies to hire 2 returning citizens and keep them for 2 years. And I know he got more than 30 companies to sign up for it. We've had a welfare to career program since the late 90s. And that is to help people bridge out of poverty, off welfare. And so Amy, she's one of probably the longest tenured. She was one of the first ones in the program. She's still with us. She's a level C admin. And again, Mark Peters, based on the welfare to career program, created an entity called The Source. And then that led to the school systems in the state of Michigan to do pathways to potential, where they were putting social workers in the school system, because that's what's unique about The Source and our welfare to career program. We actually had the DHS, Department of Health and Services, on site in our organization. So the employees no longer had to go downtown to their office. They could walk across the parking lot and see their caseworker right there on site. If you've seen pink garbage cans, then we made it. And for every pink garbage can we sell, we give $5 to the American Cancer Society. So far, we've given over $750,000 to the Cancer Society. So, you know, and that being an anti-racism organization, you know, we are the co-creator of a trademark registered program called Diversity Theater. And we just held our 12th Young Professionals of Color Conference that Cascade coordinates and manages. And so a lot of our things I could say, but, you know, we've received a lot of publicity, various publications, writing articles. We've won many awards for those programs. And so, you know, the question is, how do you think our employees feel when they recognize the products they're making are helping improve people's lives? Or, you know, how do you think employees feel when they see their company mentioned in the magazine or news article? And I can only say, as an employee of 44 years, extremely proud of what this organization has done. Of course, I mentioned safety, and so we have a STOP program, stands for Safety Training Observation Program. It's mandatory for all employees. It's also mandatory that everyone do monthly STOP audits where we go out into the plants, we look for safety concerns, write up a report and submit it to the safety director, right? It's part of our bonus payout or their bonus payout since I'm not there anymore. And here's the other unique thing about Cascade is we invite OSHA or my OSHA in our case in. We don't wait for them to come knocking. So annually, or I don't know how often, but we call them up and say, hey, want to come in and do an audit? And we want them to find stuff so that we can fix it, right? So we take safety very seriously. Of course, a lot of your basic classes and trainings and drills and such. But how about psychological safety? Well, our behavioral expectations. That's what we're trying to create, right? Is so people feel that they're being respected, their dignity, and that they're valued, right? And that's got to create some psychological safety. We have a violence of warning system. We've done active shooter training, violence awareness training, zero tolerance, diversity theater this year, because we run one every 5 years, we create a new one. This is diversity theater 3, is actually subtitled Civility in the Workplace. So we try to create not only a physically safe, but a psychological safe environment. So back to the model, I want to just talk about briefly the last two things. While compensation, if you look at a lot of the surveys, it has become more important than it ever was before. But I always tell organizations, your pay needs to be competitive, but you don't have to be the highest payer. But it's tough if you're the lowest, just be honest. Right. So I was talking to a group of businesses out in Iowa years ago, and we were talking about this model. And we got to the compensation piece. A couple of them were stating that they're in industries where the pay is just naturally, traditionally lower. So what do they do? And I simply said, well, that makes everything above it even more important, doesn't it? And treating people with dignity and respect costs very little. So I said, if I was you, I would work really hard on leadership development and, being engaged maybe in the community more and offering development opportunities, whatever you can do above if you can't compete on wages, right? And then the last thing is policies and procedures. They're very important because they reinforce everything above. Here's the rubber hits the road right here. What are you going to do with a leader who's meeting all of their production metrics or their, profitability goals, however you measure their productivity success, but they treat their employees horribly? And unfortunately, I know many companies will turn their head and ignore the bad behavior because they like the results. And I just say that if that's true, you'll never be truly an employer of choice. So where to begin? I think the first thing, put stake in the game. We're going to be an employer of choice. You gotta describe the kind of culture you want, set the cultural expectations, and then communicate. Right? What is an employer of choice? Why is it important? Again, re-emphasize cultural expectations. Then you got to educate. Every executive, every employee, every leader must be taught those behavioral expectations and given some tools or skills to make them manifest. Right? And sometimes this requires shifting people's paradigms. And then the fourth thing is you got to hold people accountable. So with that, thank you very much for this. If you have any questions, I'd be happy